The sun was just dipping below the horizon in Willow Creek Estates, a pristine neighborhood in the heart of Colorado, where every lawn was a masterpiece and every house gleamed like it belonged in a glossy real estate ad. It was October 12th, 2024, and I, Nathan Carter, a mid-level marketing exec, thought my wife, Olivia, and I had landed in paradise when we moved here 9 months ago. We were wrong, dead wrong. Our HOA president, Deborah Mitchell, had turned our dream neighborhood into her personal fiefdom. And what happened when she crossed the wrong person? Let's just say it was a masterclass in justice that nobody saw coming. Comment below with where you're reading from, because this story is about to take you on a wild ride. Deborah Mitchell wasn't just any HOA president. She was a former IRS auditor, let go after 20 years for being, well, too ruthless. Imagine someone so relentless that even the IRS thought she was too much. Fired for excessive aggression, she didn't retire quietly. Instead, she found a new battlefield, our picture-perfect Willow Creek Estates. To her, our neighborhood was a canvas for control, and she wielded her HOA rulebook like a sledgehammer. Olivia and I, with our sleek new Audi and a house that screamed new money to someone like Deborah, were prime targets. What Deborah didn't know was that Olivia wasn't just my charming wife who hosted killer dinner parties. Olivia Harper Carter was, by day, Judge Olivia Harper, a state court judge with a razor-sharp legal mind and a reputation for dismantling bullies in the courtroom. At home, she was just Olivia Carter, the woman who baked cookies for neighbors and kept our garden blooming. Deborah saw her as an easy mark. Big mistake. It started small, as these things often do. Our first violation came when Olivia planted vibrant sunflowers in our front yard instead of the HOA-approved tulips. A $100 fine landed in our mailbox. Olivia glanced at it, shrugged, and paid it online that afternoon. Then came the flagpole fiasco. Ours was apparently 3 inches too short. Another $200 fine. I was fuming, ready to storm over to Deborah's house and give her a piece of my mind. But Olivia just smiled and said, "Nathan, trust me. I've got this." Her calm was unnerving, but I'd learned to trust that look in her eyes. It was the look of someone playing a long game. Deborah's fatal error was mistaking Olivia's composure for weakness. Olivia had this quiet authority, honed from years of presiding over courtrooms, hearing every excuse and manipulation tactic in the book. When Deborah marched over with her clipboard, rattling off violations in her smug tone, Olivia would nod politely and ask, "What do I need to do to resolve this?" It drove Deborah up the wall. She wanted drama, tears, arguments, maybe some groveling. Instead, she got Olivia's unflappable professionalism, which only made her double down. The Real explosion came on a crisp Monday morning. I was sipping coffee, still in my pajamas, when Deborah strutted across the street, practically bouncing with glee. She handed Olivia a fine for $3,000, claiming our car was parked 8 inches over the driveway line on our own property, mind you. "This will teach you to respect authority," she muttered, thinking we didn't hear. But Olivia heard every word, and I saw a flicker in her eyes, not of anger, but of something sharper, like a predator locking onto prey. "Nathan," she said later, folding the fine notice with surgical precision, "Deborah's about to learn what real authority looks like." That evening, Olivia retreated to her study, emerging with a thick folder and a look of quiet determination. "She thinks she's dealing with a pushover," Olivia told me. "She has no idea who she's up against." While I was itching to confront Deborah, Olivia was collecting evidence: every fine, every threat, every overreach of HOA power. She was also quietly talking to neighbors, piecing together a mosaic of Deborah's reign of terror. The Wilsons, a retired couple, had been fined $1,000 for a non-compliant birdhouse. A single mom down the street got slapped with a $600 penalty for a slightly faded mailbox. Olivia was building a case, and Deborah was handing her the ammunition. By Tuesday, Deborah escalated. She showed up with a typed document, demanding Olivia write personalized apology letters to all 142 households in Willow Creek for her disregard of community standards. She even provided a template, dripping with condescension, insisting the letters be handwritten for sincerity. I nearly choked on my coffee, but Olivia just asked, should they be single-spaced or double? That night, she sat at our kitchen table, crafting letters so polite and professional they could have been framed. What I didn't know was that she was cataloging every interaction with Deborah, photographing documents, recording conversations, with consent, of course, and building a legal fortress. Wednesday brought more insanity. Deborah demanded Olivia make in-person apologies to 5 deeply offended neighbors, complete with homemade brownies. Olivia complied, charming everyone she visited. By the time she returned, half the neighborhood was buzzing about how gracious she was and how unhinged Deborah seemed. Thursday, Deborah tacked on a $1,500 administrative fee for processing Olivia's complex case. When Olivia asked for the fee's legal basis, Deborah stammered, then handed over a written explanation so detailed it was practically a confession of overreach. By Friday, Deborah was in full dictator mode. She called a mandatory HOA meeting for Saturday night, billing it as a public accountability session to address the chronic violator in our midst. The announcement went out to every household, and you could feel her glee at the thought of publicly shaming Olivia. That night, Olivia sat at our dining table, organizing her evidence like a general preparing for battle. "Tomorrow's going to be unforgettable," she said, her voice calm but electric. I asked what she meant, but she just smiled and said 3 words that sent a chill down my spine. "Deborah's finished here." Saturday night, the Willow Creek Community Center was packed, 70 neighbors squeezed into folding chairs, the air thick with anticipation. Deborah had turned the meeting into a spectacle, complete with a projector, evidence boards, and a podium like she was arguing before the Supreme Court. I watched her arrange her materials with the intensity of a prosecutor, thinking she'd lost all grip on reality. Olivia, though, walked in serene, took a front row seat, and pulled out a legal pad like she was attending a seminar. Deborah's presentation was a masterclass in obsession. She had slides of our violations, photos of our car's 8-inch overreach, measurements of our non-compliant sunflowers, even neighbor testimonies, mostly coerced, I later learned. "Ladies and gentlemen," she declared, pausing for dramatic effect, "we have a resident who believes her wealth exempts her from our standards." For 50 minutes, she laid out her case against Olivia, complete with charts on how our actions were lowering property values. Olivia just took notes, nodding occasionally, showing no sign of distress. When Deborah finished, she turned to Olivia with a triumphant smirk. "Mrs. Carter, this community demands a public apology, acceptance of $4,500 in fines, and a 9-month probationary status." The room went silent, every eye on Olivia. Then she stood, smoothed her skirt, and spoke in a voice so composed it gave me goosebumps. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for your meticulous documentation. It's clear you've invested tremendous effort here." Deborah beamed, thinking she'd won. "But," Olivia continued, pulling a document from her purse, "I'd like written clarification of the legal authority behind these demands. Could you specify the HOA's enforcement powers and the legal framework for these penalties?" Deborah, riding her wave of arrogance, grabbed a pen and wrote a detailed statement, claiming the HOA could enforce rules via police action and that violations were akin to criminal offenses. She even got 3 neighbors to sign as witnesses, sealing her fate. Olivia read the document slowly, folded it with care, and said, "This will be very helpful, Ms. Mitchell." The room didn't know it yet, but Deborah had just handed Olivia the keys to her downfall. Sunday morning felt deceptively calm, birds chirping, coffee brewing. But by noon, the storm broke. Olivia was on the phone, her voice sharp and professional. "Let's resolve this through proper channels," she said before hanging up. When I asked who it was, she just smiled and said, "Deborah is about to make the mistake of her life." Then the doorbell rang, and Sheriff Daniel Hayes pulled into our driveway. My heart sank. Sheriffs don't just drop by for coffee. But Olivia greeted him like an old colleague. "Sheriff Hayes, I believe you're here about the HOA issue." Deborah came charging across the street, clutching her folder like a lifeline, practically giddy. "Sheriff, thank you for coming. Olivia Carter refuses to pay a legal $3,000 fine and is violating court-ordered penalties. This is theft of community services. Arrest her now." Her voice was shrill, her face flushed with triumph. Sheriff Hayes looked puzzled, turning to Olivia. "Ma'am, is there an outstanding fine?" Olivia replied calmly, I'm happy to pay any legitimate fine, Sheriff. Deborah exploded. Payment isn't enough. She needs to be arrested to learn respect for authority. Hayes started asking routine questions: dates, notices, violations. Olivia answered with legal precision, tossing around terms like due process and statutory authority like she was born speaking them. Deborah, sensing her plan unraveling, doubled down, threatening Hayes. If you don't arrest her, I'll report you to your supervisor for ignoring the law. That's when Hayes's demeanor shifted from mediator to cop. He turned to Olivia. Ma'am, you seem familiar. Did you administer oaths at the county ceremony 2 years ago? Olivia nodded. I swore in several officials, including law enforcement. Hayes's face changed recognition, then embarrassment. Judge Harper, he said, almost snapping to attention. Your Honor, I didn't recognize you without your robes. I'm so sorry. The air froze. Deborah's jaw dropped. Neighbors watching from their lawns gasped. This is impossible. Deborah shrieked. She's just a housewife. I've seen her gardening. But the panic in her voice betrayed her. She knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Olivia pulled out her folder, handing it to Hayes. Sheriff, these documents detail Ms. Mitchell's actions, false claims of legal authority, threats of arrest, and systematic harassment of a judicial officer. Hayes read through them, his expression darkening. Ms. Mitchell, he said, holding up Deborah's handwritten statement. Did you claim HOA violations are criminal offenses subject to arrest? Olivia stepped into full judge mode, addressing the growing crowd like a courtroom. What we have here is harassment of a judicial officer, a felony carrying up to 2 years in prison. Ms. Mitchell's false claims and attempts to coerce compliance lack any legal basis. The crowd erupted. Neighbors shared their own stories. $900 fines for wrong fence colors. Threats of eviction over unapproved porch lights. Hayes took notes, treating it like a criminal investigation. Your Honor, he said to Olivia, what would you like me to do? Deborah was crumbling, sobbing. I didn't know. She should have told me. But Olivia's next move was pure genius. Instead of pressing charges, she offered Deborah a deal. Resign from the HOA, apologize to every neighbor, pay back $9,000 in improper fines, complete 250 hours of community service, and attend anger management. One misstep, and criminal charges would follow. Over the next months, Deborah transformed. Her apologies were heartfelt. Her restitution checks a lifeline for struggling families. She shopped for elderly neighbors, fixed fences for veterans, and learned humility through service. Willow Creek blossomed, too. Olivia helped rewrite HOA bylaws, turning meetings into community events. Property values soared, not from rigid rules, but from genuine neighborly bonds. Deborah even started joining barbecues, not as a tyrant, but as a neighbor trying to make amends. This is the story of how HOA tyrant Deborah Mitchell picked a fight with Judge Olivia Harper Carter, thinking she was an easy target, only to learn she'd challenged a legal titan. Justice wasn't just served, it was sculpted with mercy and precision. So what do you think? Should Olivia have pressed charges to make Deborah pay the full price? Or was her merciful deal the better path? Could you forgive someone like Deborah after such abuse? Or would you demand harsher consequences? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if this story gripped you, and subscribe for more real-life drama. Where are you reading from? And what would you do if you faced a bully like Deborah?